And we're live.
All right, we are live. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're dialing in of today. Let's give everyone a couple of more seconds to get comfortable, to grab a coffee, or just to dial in. Before we start, to make this also an interactive session, maybe you can just drop in the chat where you all dial in from. We are recording live today from different cities out of Belgium and Netherlands, but I will introduce the speakers of that session to you in a second. Maybe quickly from my side to myself, I'm Christian, I'm the head of sales of Elimity, and I will be your host for the next couple of minutes, for the next like 30-40 minutes. Let's see how much questions you are having and how interactive the session will be. Maybe some housekeeping before we kick it off from a content point of view. So we have the question bar on the side. We have also the chat. So when you join us now, just drop in the chat where you're coming from. If you have questions, drop them there, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. All right, I see more and more people dialing in from different locations, some also from rainy Belgium, some I see from Germany. Great to have you all over here. So then I would say we're going to start and kick this one off over here. So today we're going to share 5 tips to take control of user access within days. I have with me today Ricardo. Ricardo is from our partner Cegeka, and Ricardo is the product manager. And I would say Ricardo is one of the veterans of the IAM industry. So been there for, actually since the industry started. So a lot of experience he will share with you. He will introduce to you what he's doing on Cegeka and how the partnership looks like. And I have our VP of product, well-known Martin de Cat, with me over here, and he will give the view on the product and the insight. So what are we going to do today? What we're going to zoom in on today is the following. So first of all, Ricardo is going to give you a short intro of our partnership with Cegeka. What's the company doing for all the ones who don't know Cegeka yet? Then we're going to take a look at why you need identity governance. So for all the kind of things that's important from security, from regulation point of view, all the different angles. And then we're going to zoom in how you're able to take control of user access within days. So really zooming in on the lightweight approach and what is the approach to do that, how to do that fast, and how to do that with as less effort as possible. As we all know, organizations are busy. Security is important, but it's always needs to be prioritized. So we need to make it as easy, adaptable as possible. And then last but not least, as you already, if you're a regular visitor of our webinars, there's always going to be some homework, some nuggets to take home to be able to do something even without the help of Cegeka and with Elimity. But of course, afterwards, also, if you're interested, we're going to share our contact details, and you have some question, reach out. But before of that, of course, also some Q&A in order to ask your question right here in the webinar. All right, with that being said, I think we have a nice audience. Ricardo, I will hand over to you to start with your part.
Thank you, Christian, for the introduction. I'm starting with an introduction of Cegeka. So, who is Cegeka? Well, Cegeka is a family-owned company. We were founded 30 years ago in Belgium, and today I have over 9,000 colleagues. And our revenue this year is estimated at 1.4 billion euros, and we are active in over 19 countries. So, what does Cegeka do? What is our portfolio? We are active in the domain of applications, cyber resilience, data and artificial intelligence, infrastructure, and in connectivity. That's quite a broad portfolio, and you will find our identity and access management products and solutions in the cyber resilient pillar. So let's dive into the subject of today, identity governance. And what is identity governance? Well, identity governance makes sure that the right people can access the right resources at the right times and for the right reasons. So maybe you're asking yourselves, why do I need this? Well, there are a few reasons. First of all, it helps your organization to comply with laws and regulations like GDPR and NIS2. But it also enhances security by preventing unauthorized access to sensitive information. And it helps you streamlining processes, reduce redundancies, and improve your operational efficiency. But also, identity governance identifies and mitigates risks associated with identity and access management. And lastly, it provides a clear audit trail for who has access to what and why. So, in essence, identity governance ensures you that your organization operates smoothly and securely while complying with necessary regulations. And therefore, it's a key component in safeguarding your digital assets. So, with identity governance in place, when you are in control, you should be able to answer questions like, do you know whether there are still active user accounts in your systems that belong to people that already left the company? Or can these people still access your systems? Do you know who of your employees exactly has administrator rights on your critical service? Or do you know which employees can access HR data and financial data? Do you know which employees can commit fraud by both submitting and approving contracts or invoices? So my question to the audience today would be, are you in control of your identity governance? Well, if you're not, take into account that getting in control is not that easy. In the past 20 years, Christian already mentioned it. Actually, it's almost 24 years that I've been working in this domain. I've been involved in full stack identity governance and administration implementations, mostly for larger organizations and organizations that are well funded. And these IGA solutions, they are very powerful. They implement all of the joiner mover lever processes. These solutions provide a single view of identity and access data across the organization. But setting up such an IGA can take months up to years. Mostly years than months. Meaning, before these solutions start delivering value, you need to do a lot of things. Setting up an IGA solution includes things like deploying connectors, define access policies, compliance policies. You need to think of role definitions. You have to configure role-based access control. You have to think of how to provision and deprovisioning. You have to configure lifecycle events, define request processes, approval workflows, implement access reviews, set up reporting and audit tools, and more things. So to wrap it up, it takes a lot of effort, time, and money to get a full stack IGA solution up and running. So, what if you are now a company that suddenly needs to comply, for example, with NIS2? Well, you will have to manage many aspects of cyber security. and often with a limited security team. And this is where our partnership with Elimity is aiming for. So Elimity focuses on the essentials of user access and identity governance. And this means ensuring visibility of your current users and their permissions, so you know who can do what. And with this information, IT and the business can review and clean up these accounts and permissions. With Elimity, the process of visibility and taking corrective actions is implemented as an ongoing process. And I believe Elimity calls this a closed-loop data approach. And the power of this approach is that it can be implemented and deliver value. Christian said days. In my opinion, it's days, yes. But in a few weeks, you have value instead of months or even years. So before Martin is going to explain how to get this visibility on users and their permissions, let's have a short look at two examples of challenges that Cegeka customers have and where we work with Elimity getting this process on visibility implemented. So the first customer is a technology company active in more than 100 countries. They have 30,000 employees. However, the scope for deployment is locally with 1,500 users. And they struggle with identity governance because they don't know which entitlements belong to which accounts and which identities have which accounts. And this makes it very hard for them to prove they are in control. So they need better visibility on their identity landscape to improve their identity management. And the second example is a European insurance company with 800 employees. They struggle to comply with this too and DORA because they haven't fully implemented their identity governance processes. And their roles are missing or they are not complete. And furthermore, they are unable to generate the necessary audit reports. So both examples we address today with the Elimity technology. So now it's time for Martin to take over and he will explain you how it works. And I will finish my part of the presentation with saying, Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ricardo. So to take over, these were the customer cases. So the clear challenge that we see in the market that we really focus on also in this webinar is, like Ricardo said, there's an importance and growing importance, I would say, of governing who can access what, especially through regulations like NIS2 these days. The typical approaches take a lot of time and effort, which again is not doable for many companies out there, like again, those companies that are now covered all of a sudden by NIS2. So there's a clear need for a lightweight approach to proving that you're in control. And this really is where the collaboration, so the partnership between Cegeka and Elimity comes in. So we at Elimity provide a data-driven platform for identity governance. And Cegeka is a European leader that guides organizations through their security journey and helps apply this platform and approach in practice. And so to dig a bit deeper into that approach, like Ricardo already mentioned, it really focuses on the essentials of user access governance by looking at the problem as a data problem. So in that case, the least that you should have is you should at least have visibility over your users and their permissions, so you know what people can currently do in your critical systems and preferably in all of your systems. And then you should let IT, the business, the core security team, all of them review this, clean up these accounts and accesses, take action on any findings, and then automatically monitor these findings over time. And that's really a closed loop data approach that lets you get in control and remain in control of who can access files. So if you're talking about an external regulator or the CISO or anyone that wants to know that, yeah, well, are you in control of your use and your access in this And with this approach, you can say we have visibility, we know where there are risks to be found, we've identified them, and we have the audit proof that we've addressed these risks. And so at Elimity, we provide a platform specifically for this. I would say, in layman's terms, think of this as a sort of Power BI specifically built for IAM, and it goes a bit further than just reporting as well. So in essence, the platform enables easy data collection, so collecting data from your most important sources, and it's always from a risk perspective. So what are your critical applications? Where is the identity data located for those sources? And there we want to get the users, the permissions, the roles. That's the type of data that we're talking about, so that you can then understand who can currently do what and identify risks, then automatically monitor access over time, indicate necessary changes, and also run access reviews to include line managers, application owners, site owners, maybe data owners, whatever that you have in your governance structure, to include these people in the process as well. So it's really an IGA, but without provisioning, without the lifecycle workflows, all to make it easier to deploy and get faster cybersecurity value. And that last point, that's really the point here, that cybersecurity value, because this approach, we mean to turn around the traditional IGA journey. Like Ricardo said, you start by setting up read-write connectors to all of your systems, defining workflows, large impact on the organization, data quality has to be on par. You define role models of who should be able to get access to what and so on. And from a risk perspective, from a security perspective, your value of cleaning up your access and so on just comes at the end of that journey. And so instead, we want to turn that around into what we call security first identity governance, where you focus on identifying your access risks, your current access risks, with as little effort as possible. And then review, clean up, and monitor your users and their accesses over time. And this really prioritizes cybersecurity return on investment first. You want to remove the largest risks first, and then push heavy investments like designing those role models and setting up provisioning, push that forward in time. And if you then reach that fundamentally improved cybersecurity posture, as it's called here on the slide, if you want to get beyond that, then of course this approach also gives you a very important data foundation, very valuable data foundation, for example, to efficiently start designing role models, separation of duty policies and so on, but that's stuff for another presentation. So to show you the process of getting in control, let's look at a specific case study. It relates to the case studies that Ricardo mentioned as well. And this here is an example of a company of around 2,000 employees that wanted to increase their internal control, to decrease cyber risk, to show compliance. But really, in the example of Ricardo, they had to do a lot with a small security team. So they're definitely not a big bank or something like that. And for those contexts, our standard approach works in 5 phases. The first phase is that you start off with focusing on that first visibility. So you really want to get visibility on who can access what in the most critical applications. And we always think along with the customer, so it's not like we enforce what the critical applications for you should be, but it should start from a risk assessment in your general security workflow, your general security way of working, of course. And then you focus on where are your crown jewels. Can be an operational system for factories, maybe, can be a cloud environment for SaaS vendors. It really depends on your type of business. And then you look at where are the users and the accounts for those systems located. And those are the sources that we get into or want to get into the system first. Top 5, top 10, top 20 applications, and you iterate through the complete list of applications. And 9 out of 10, that's typically Active Directory, if you still have on-premise stuff, Azure AD or Entra ID, as I should call it. And then it kind of depends on your focus. We have customers that focus on local admins on machines, or database admins, or development environment like GitHub, or SharePoint. SharePoint is asked a lot these days. Whatever is important and where you have too much permissions, that's what you want to get in there. And typically in the first phase, like shown here on the slide, the 2 days there, that's for the top 5 applications. And typically 4 out of 5 is covered with out-of-the-box connectors. So you get really fast into that first visibility so that your security team can then start investigating and cleaning up. And to guide you towards risks, So imagine that you have this overview of your employees. Ideally, you also include an HR system, and then you tie all the different accounts of the most important systems to that employee record. So you have interesting metadata of the employee, like the start date, the end date, the job title, place in the organization, the name of the manager, all of that, and you can see where that person, can access or has access. And then it's up to us and you to make sense of that. So you can dig into those details yourself, but we also help you with this framework of key security controls. Those are 8 categories of security controls that cover the frameworks like an ISO 27001 and a SOC 2. And it includes stuff like orphaned accounts, so accounts that shouldn't be there anymore, or privileged accounts, so accounts that have admin privileges in your systems. You really want to get a view on those. But equally as well, data quality, role hygiene, segregation of duty, very important around financial systems or in a financial context. And then, of course, also business-specific controls, where we do a small workshop together with a customer, because you know what is important to your specific organization. It can be that some geography should not be able to access another geography, or separation of departments, or maybe separation of environments between a test environment and a production environment. All of those things you want to turn into controls in the system, so that you make sense of this data that you have here, this data foundation, and you then end up with a collection of your most important systems, always up to date, so you can see who can do what, but also a list of security controls that indicate where the largest risks are. So you can, for example, start working on admin AD accounts that are linked to inactive employees. You get a list of that, and you can really start improving on that risk, so removing those findings and decreasing your risk very rapidly. And if you want to go deeper into the data, there's of course more visualizations, like for example, comparing the people or the access of people on the same team to detect outliers, or maybe to use this data to construct your first roles, your first role model, and so on. And so looping back to the case study that I was talking about, in that case, they really focused on Active Directory first as a very specific first step. It's also a very easy step to take because it's completely out of the box. And so they quickly found active orphaned accounts, and they were able to clean it up in a matter of days. And that was really important to the CISO in this company, because identity governance has an image of being expensive, being years of work. And the CISO really wanted to apply a risk-first approach and show that there's still a rapid success to be made. Of course, you don't do everything that deploying a large IGA suite would do. But in this case, it's really about that visibility, finding things that shouldn't be there, and cleaning those up. So the overall impact was a clear view of the largest risks, immediate security improvements, audit proof that they're doing the necessary work, and then the perfect input to prioritize their next steps. And then they iterate from Active Directory to also include an HR system, Azure AD, and in this case, database administrators. File shares was very important to them as well. And that way, the system and the data foundation keeps on growing, and you get more and more insights in the critical parts of your IT landscape. And so that's really that first loop that you see here. So iterating and building your data foundation over time. Of course, the focus, or the things that I've shown you right now, is really meant for the core security team. They can analyze and make conclusions over the low-hanging fruit, like technical accounts and the orphaned admin accounts, and those are things that they typically know of. But at some point, if you're a company of hundreds or thousands of people, then those people can't know everything anymore, and you have to include others in this process as well. Like, for example, team leaders that are responsible for their teams, application owners that are responsible for their applications, and so on. And you don't do that by just giving them access to this whole data set. They're not interested in that, and it will smack them down with too much technical information. But instead, you want to do that through the well-known governance process of access reviews, or recertifications is the word that I was looking for. So in that case, you give them the specific question like, could you review the Active Directory assignments or Active Directory groups assigned to people in your team? Or could you review the different roles that we have that give access to your application? Could you review the list of Active Directory admin accounts like we had before in that query? If there's a control about admin AD accounts linked to inactive employees, and start from that list and ask a specific question to the team leaders. Well, we from the core security team, we see these potential risks. These accounts were assigned to people in your team. Could you give us your blessing that these accounts really aren't needed anymore? And so that's how you involve these people in this process. In stage 4 and stage 5, very important, and something that we've learned from practice is don't just throw or get them in the process and ask a question of reviewing just everything all at once. The business typically has to be educated on this, and if you start from these controls that you've seen before, with, for example, again, the example with the admin AD accounts, then you have the ability to, or the advantage, sorry, to ask a much more specific question. So you're not asking to review all of the technical AD groups that are out there, but really focus on lowering specific risks that you've identified. And the question towards those people becomes a lot more specific, so that you really bring them in the process with some specific question and grow from first a cleanup mentality to then more continuous monitoring, continuous governance, where you repeat that exercise every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever suits your risk exposures, and then also go towards reviewing the complete set of AD accounts of someone in a team, or a complete set of AD groups, or whatever you have there, but at much higher scale once you're in that fundamentally improved security posture. So all in all, this is an approach to getting control and staying control with a much lower total cost of ownership than deploying a full IGA suite. And the essence really is that we're looking at identity governance as a data platform. And so again, very briefly, this was what we've covered. It is what a platform gives you there. But even if you don't you do this together with Elimity or Cegeka or with our platform, then at least if there's one thing that I want you to get from this presentation, this is this homework to take control of user access. Look at this as a data platform. So when you get back to the office, if you haven't done this, the first step is perform a risk analysis. You should definitely do that in your general security approach. So I hope that everyone here has already done that, and think of what your most important assets are and what the related identity sources are. Like I said, 9 out of 10, that's Active Directory, maybe some other applications, Enter ID, all of those things. And then define the essential security controls. That's really the guide that I've shown you before with the 8 categories. The most important ones from our experience in practice are the orphaned accounts, the privileged accounts, separation of duty, and then the business-specific policies. And then, really important, collect data. Make this a data exercise. So collect the users, the permissions, and so on from all of your critical systems. Then apply your security controls to identify risk. And by the way, in a few slides, we still have I still have the QR code and the link towards this guide if you want to apply this. And so you apply the security controls to identify risk. And then step 5, crucial step that really closes this whole effort, but often forgotten in practice, is if you then act to clean up those risks, also monitor afterwards. So repeat steps 2, 3, and 4 to show your progress over time. And this is what makes this data exercise this valuable, because you focus on actual risks that are out there, but it also gives you the ammunition to show we're really doing our jobs, we're improving over time. Yes, dear CISO, we know that there are these risks. We haven't done our homework in the last 10 years, but now we can improve. And this is the part that will buy you goodwill over time and shows that you're really progressing. So these are the 5 steps, of the homework to take control of user access. As we mentioned, you don't have to use our platform for that, but of course, if you want to do these efficiently, then by all means, come take a look at our very specific platform, specifically built for this. It will take a lot of this effort off of your shoulders. And if you still think that this sounds like too much work, then also know that Cegeka and Elimity provide this as a service. So we call it an identity security assessment, where Cegeka comes into your company together with our platform, connects it to your top 5 systems, applies this framework for you, and then in the end, you have this nice report on the one hand, but on the other hand, also a live and working environment of Elimity Insights that gives you that makes these results tangible. So if the report says there are so many orphaned admin accounts found, then this is a control in the platform and gives you the specific list, the overview, you can click through and so on to really make this actionable, start making decisions and start cleaning up these risks. And that's what we call an identity security assessment, fixed price, fixed effort, really to give you the perfect starting spot to start doing all of this effort and taking control of who can access what. And so that's everything that we wanted to discuss for today. If you want to read more, then the left QR code is for the identity assessment. The right QR code is this information again, but in a nice ebook. So the essential security controls for NIS2 compliance. And the bottom QR code is for a guide around IAM, so a bit broader than this specific, more specific presentation about IAM from a CISO's perspective, which might be handy to guide other people in your security team into the world of identity and access management. And so, Christian, there's still time for questions.
There's plenty of time for questions, and I see there are coming a lot of questions in the chat, so that's I always like those kind of things. But first of all, Ricardo, Martin, thank you for the really interesting presentation, for the insights. So indeed, let's open the floor to the audience and to the questions, and there is one coming in. I will start off with is Elimity is analyzing access given to identities in the enterprise, and what kind of actions can be taken post-analysis of access, remediation actions, notify admins, all those kind of things. Martin, I think that's one for you.
Yeah, okay, clear question. Thanks for that. So I'll take on another slide. So if you want, I can go deeper into the answer in an actual demo. But in essence, the feature that you see on the top right, it's about making or indicating necessary changes. So imagine that you have this overview of your accounts, their attributes, the relationships, the ID groups assigned to people and so on. On every piece of the data, so it's a large data graph on a technical level, on every piece of that you can indicate, or user can indicate that something has to be changed, like an attribute has to be updated, a group has to be added, a group has to be revoked, and an account has to be deleted. All of those things, that's what we call the change request, the necessary changes as it's called on this slide. And so for all of these, in the system, you make a list of all of that, you can indicate that, or people indicate that through the access reviews. And the value is that you then have an overview of all of the changes that anyone has seen, or any issue that someone has seen, and the necessary change to cover on that. We don't write back to the source system, so we don't do the creation, the updating, the removal ourselves. But if you want, you can forward those change requests automatically to, for example, a ServiceNow to create a ticket out of that, and the system on every data update will track whether this change has actually been done, so not on the status of that ticket, but on the actual data that is loaded. And if you made that change, then the system gives you the audit proof to really show that you have identified something, that a change was needed, and that you've made that change. So those are the necessary remediation actions. And for all of the controls that you've seen before, so of the 8 categories, if there's a control in the system, we call that a stored query, you can get notified of that if new results are found, for example. And if you receive that notification and you see that something has to be changed, then again, turn this into a change request and trigger the remediation action. That's where the platform goes beyond just reporting. I hope that answered your question.
All right. There are a couple of more questions. Maybe one also for our partner. That's more a partner question. I would think, what kind of support and training does Elimity / Cegeka provide during initial stages of implementation? Ricardo, can you cover that?
Yeah, so normally when we do our analysis and create a project with Elimity, Cegeka takes care of the technical part of the deployment, so that's made easy for the customer. But then we work together with the customer experts on training them into the application, and we sit with them over time so that they can work with the solution. So we stay in contact with the customer over time and make sure that the solution is utilized as best as possible. Does that answer the question?
I think that's gonna answer the question. If you have more questions, please feel free.
And maybe to add to that,
chat.
Ricardo, because you now replied from the perspective of deploying the software, that there's an important phase before that as well. Because the role of Cegeka is really you have the customer intimacy, you know the customer organization, you know our platform, so you can also see or advise on how this fits in the complete security journey, when it's optimal to do all of these things. So it's twofold, I would say. It's the preliminary advice and guidance, and then the deployment, the training afterwards, and all the technical work as well.
Thank you, Maarten. That's exactly what I meant, but you can say it much more beautiful than I.
Okay, then I have another one. It's more understanding question. So Elimity does not deal with identities, create/update. Rather, it analyzes access of identities. Is that understanding correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Yeah, so we don't do the whole provisioning, the whole workflows, the automation of join and move or leave workflows. It really focuses on giving you visibility on what people can currently do in your critical systems. And that currently is also important because we've seen organizations that try to do this themselves by asking an admin to export something using PowerShell scripts and so on. But then it's always a heavy exercise, heavy to repeat, and you work with outdated data. So this really focuses on setting up that connection once, really the Power BI mentality, the Power BI way of thinking, and then showing you who can access what, allowing to really find issues yourself, ask questions to the data platform, and then go beyond that by fixing things that shouldn't be there. So it's a identity analytics, lightweight governance, whatever you want to call it.
All right, great, Martin, thank you. And then we have another one which goes, I think, a bit beyond the scope we were discussing today, but I think maybe an interesting one to cover anyway. What all popular IGA tools like Savient, SailPoint, or Oracle can be used together with Elimity?
Do you know what is asked about use together with Elimity?
I'm not sure that's the question we got here, but I would assume if it can coexist with popular tools.
Yeah, definitely. So the focus of this webinar was on the use case or the business case for companies that don't have an IGA yet. So they're really at their first phases of getting in control about tackling user access management, and they haven't installed or deployed Savient or SailPoint or an Oracle or One Identity or Nomada or whatever of those systems yet. If there are, well, we also have customers that are in the process of doing that. And in that case, Elimity Insights, a very lightweight first step to have the visibility, clean up your accounts, start doing role mining and so on early in the process. So that's also a variation of what I've talked about. And the other variation is if you as a company have a very mature and large scale IGA deployments like a Savient or a SailPoint that has been deployed or One Identity, then you can also just put us on top of that data to have better reporting, better analytics, but then on top of your employees, business roles, technical roles, entitlements, applications, all of the data that you already have in there. So we're not forcing you to repeat all of that effort, of course, but that's also a way of looking at things and providing extra analytics on top of that existing data. So those are variations of the focus of this webinar, which was on the first variation, the focus on those companies that don't have an IGA yet.
Indeed, but if you want to go back to our recordings, so now that you're in the ecosystem of Elimity, we have plenty of recordings, and especially to that topic, think more towards the beginning of the year, there was a banking use case, I think it's called a banking use case or something. There we have a webinar covering everything around that kind of topic.
Yeah, there the value really is the lower effort, the lower cost of reporting, IAM reporting. That the buyer is the IAM team. Here the focus is really on the security value, I would say.
Yeah. All right. Then maybe a final question that just came in. It's about the deployment option of the Elimity solution. Can you enlighten us over there how that is possible, or what are the possibilities here for the different use cases?
Yeah, very briefly. So you have the on-premise as well as SaaS. So we provide both. And the question in practice, I would say, really is where the data is located that you want to have visibility on. So if you're a SaaS first company, then it definitely makes most sense to use our SaaS version and connect it to your Azure AD, your Google Workspace, your GitHub, your Salesforce, and so on, because they're all SaaS applications in the first place. Many of the enterprise customers that we have, they still have a lot of on-premise data and on-premise sources like Active Directory, file shares, local databases. And if that's the case, then it might be just easier to deploy the software, so Elimity Insights, locally on-premise as well. So you can use the out-of-the-box connectors to these things. And it also has the benefit that you still keep this data local, which might ease the security evaluation in the procurement process, where you keep your data local and it doesn't leave your premises. That's really the balance to be made.
All right. With that being said, I think there were all the questions today. We're perfectly landing on 40 minutes. I would say, Ricardo, thank you so much for joining the session. It was a pleasure to have you over in our webinar series. Hopefully there's going to be another one with you. Martin, thanks you. A pleasure as always. And then I wish all our audience, and also to our audience, of course, thank you for joining the webinar. Thank you for asking really insightful questions. Martin said there are plenty of opportunities to get in contact with us, to get more content. Just scan the QR code or go on our website. And if you have any other open questions, just reach out to us. Otherwise, there are also new content webinars coming up in the future. So if you're interested, feel free to enjoy them as well. And then for the rest, I wish everyone a really nice day, good afternoon, good evening, and goodbye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.